What's up guys, welcome back. This is anime fiction. You'll be watching What If Naruto Was Abused and Was the Reincarnation of Guts Berserk the End. Now, let's begin. The morning sun was obscured by a thick, mysterious mist. Along the rugged shoreline, the first division of the allied shinobi forces was pushed back into the sea. Among the white waves, the famous 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist had been resurrected, their eyes black and soulless, their blades hungry for new blood. "They won't stay down," Darui exclaimed, his black lightning flashing as he deflected a hit from the reanimated Zabuza Momochi. "Every time we cut them, they just knit back together." Suddenly, the sky above the cliffside fractured rather than just brightened. A double streak of gold and purple light appeared from the clouds, accompanied by the sound of a falling star hitting the ocean. The hit unleashed a tidal surge of sand and seawater 50 feet into the air, annihilating a front line of 100 Zetsu clones in completely instant. Out of the hole emerged the horror. Arrival of the dual sons. Naruto Uzumaki stood in the midst of the devastation. He was no longer wrapped in rags, he was enveloped in the interstice mode. The jagged, lupine plates of the berserker armor were now adorned with veins of shimmering, golden nine-tails chakra. It appeared to be molten sun oozing through cracks in ancient shadow iron. The true dragon slayer hummed on his shoulder, sending a low, predatory vibration that caused the water at his feet to boil. "Yo, Darui, don't look so blue, the real heavy hitters are coming through." Killer Bee landed behind him, his 8 tails chakra bursting into a gigantic, red and gold aura. The dead are walking, the swords are talking, but the black swordsman is done with the stalking." "Naruto?" Darui exclaimed, covering his eyes from the intense density of the chakra. You weren't supposed to leave the island. The island was a cage," Naruto remarked. His voice was a dual-toned harmony of the beast and fox. "The dead belong in the ground. I'm just here to provide the weight." Iron versus the mist. Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the mist, glared at Naruto with hollow Edo Tensei eyes. He raised the Kabikirabocho, a gigantic executioner's blade, but his movements were stiff due to Kabuto's distant intent. "You've grown, kid," Zabuza said without emotion, "but that's a lot of iron for a boy to carry." "It's not a sword," Naruto explained. He released the Dragon Slayer. "It's a terminal. For everyone you've ever killed." Naruto lunged. He did not employ the body flicker, he used kinetic spite. He swings the Dragon Slayer in a horizontal arc. Zabuza raised the executioner's blade to parry, anticipating to face off with another ninja weapon. Crack. The Kabikirabocho, a unbreakable blade that could regenerate itself with blood, broke like cheap glass. The Dragon Slayer did not stop. It sheared through Zabuza's torso, but not just the Edo Tensei's papery body. The purple-gold chakra of the interstice mode destroyed the contract that bound Zabuza's soul to the world. "Beautiful," Zabuza muttered as his spirit dissolved into ash, unable to reconstitute. "A real demon." The grave marker's path. Naruto did not stop to celebrate his triumph. He transformed into a tornado of black iron and golden fire. He charged into the group of reanimated swordsmen. He encountered Kushimaru Kurarare and his longsword, Nuabari. The needle sword attempted to puncture the cracks in the berserker armor, but the golden chakra functioned like a fluid shield, trapping the blade. Naruto grasped the cable with his prosthetic iron hand and yanked, dragging the swordsman into a crushing overhead cleave. Slayer's stroke. The 7th seal. The Dragon Slayer's impact with the ground sent a shockwave through the interstice. Every reanimated soul within 100 yards felt their connection to the planet shake. Hinata and Tamari were in charge of the cleanup behind him. Hinata moved with lethal, rhythmic grace, her iron palm strikes hitting the chakra receptors in the reanimated bodies, keeping them in place long enough for the sealing teams to complete the task. Tamari utilized her fan to form gigantic wind guillotines, which kept the Zetsu army at bay. The phantom of the 4th. As the mist cleared, a new figure appeared at the back of the opposing line. He didn't resemble the others. He wore a high-collared coat and carried a customized 3-pronged kunai. Naruto paused. The brand on his neck began to shine a blinding, ice-white, indicating a presence connected to his very origin. Minato Namikaze, the 4th Hokage, gazed at his son. His eyes were black, and his skin was cracked with Edo Tensei marks. Naruto. Minato's voice was full of deep grief. What have you become? That armor. That sword. This wasn't the life I wanted for you. Naruto changed the weight of the Dragon Slayer. He glanced at the man whose blood was coursing through his veins, the man who had transformed him into a vessel before he could even breathe. You wanted a hero, father, Naruto explained, his voice flat and heavy. But heroes die. The world needed a struggler. It needed someone who could walk through the eclipse and come out with enough iron to bury the ones who started it. Minato raised his kunai, his body bending against his will as Kabuto tightened the cords. Then show me, Naruto. Show me the weight of your struggle. The black swordsman and the yellow flash faced off on the blood-soaked sand, the village's father versus the shadow son. The conflict was no longer about survival, it was about paying off previous obligations. The land of Lightning's shoreline had become a fuzzy tapestry of yellow streaks and black iron, rather than a war. Minato Namikaze moved at an incredible pace, his flying Raijin kunai whistling through the salt air like a swarm of deadly birds. Naruto stood at the midst of the storm. He lacked the chakra of a shinobi, which is the blue energy that flows through the others. The sensory ninjas on the cliffside regarded him as a black hole in the world's energy. His power was raw, physical heaviness combined with a spiritual malice that felt like a localized eclipse. You're fast, Naruto rasped, his words echoing through his wolf-helmed armor. But even light has to touch the ground eventually. Minato emerged behind Naruto in a bright yellow flash, his palm burning with the Rasengan's spiraling energy. Naruto, move. I can't stop my body. Naruto did not turn around. He did not employ any substitutions, he merely moved his weight. Clang. The Rasengan struck the back of the Berserker armor. The following explosion of energy should have severed Naruto's spine. Instead, the jagged shadow iron plates simply absorbed the kinetic power, with the armor's interior spikes burrowing into Naruto's flesh to prevent his bones from breaking. Naruto's prosthetic iron arm sprang back, grabbing Minato's wrist in a grip that felt like a mountain closing. The weight of the world. You chose to seal the beast in a child, Naruto hissed, eventually turning his head. His solitary blue eye, which had no memory of a father's love or knowledge from a former existence, was riveted on Minato. You wanted a hero to carry the weight, but you didn't give me a choice. You just gave me a burden. Minato's eyes widened as he felt the true Dragon Slayer's intense, crushing pressure. The black iron slab was more than just heavy, it felt like it was sucking the very oxygen out of the sky. I thought you would be the one to master the power, Minato muttered, his Edo Tensei body cracking as he tried to pull away. I didn't master it, Naruto said. I survived it. Naruto swung the Dragon Slayer in a huge horizontal arc. He wasn't aiming for Minato, but for the area Minato occupied. Slayer's stroke. Void Berry. The air pressure from the 400-pound blade created such a strong vacuum that Minato's teleportation markings were drawn to the center of the swing. The flying Raijin, a method that allows for instantaneous travel, has changed. Minato was taken out of the yellow flash and returned to reality. The black iron crashed into the fourth Hokage's chest. Breaking the fourth, Minato was thrown skipping across the ocean's surface, his paper-like body disintegrating with each impact. Naruto followed, leaping across the waves with gigantic strength, ignoring the water's resistance. He landed high above Minato, the Dragon Slayer. The brand on Naruto's neck was a lightless, frozen purple. Kabuto is pulling the strings, Minato exclaimed, his lower half utterly gone, the ash of the Edo Tensei attempting and failing to reconstitute. The Dragon Slayer's malice acted as a poison, preventing the soul from re-knitting the body. Naruto. I am so sorry, for the village, for everything. Save it for the afterlife, Naruto explained. He did not sense hatred. Hatred was reserved for those who still had hope. He felt resentful. The village is just a collection of walls. The people are just voices in the dark. I didn't survive for them. I survived for the struggle. Naruto drove the Dragon Slayer's point into Minato's heart. Because the blade was in the interstice, the space between the living and the dead, it did not simply cut the Edo Tensei. It terminated its contract with the rest of the world. Minato's eyes, previously black and hollow, cleared for one final second. "You've found your own path, Naruto," Minato said softly, a small, sad grin on his lips. "It's a heavy one. But it's yours." The fourth Hokage disintegrated into ash, his soul returning to the clean earth. The silence of the sea. Naruto stepped on the lake with the Dragon Slayer resting on his shoulder. The armor withdrew, leaving him panting for oxygen, the blood from its internal repairs staining his flesh. He did not gaze at the sky. He examined the prosthetic arm, which was still trembling from the impact. Hinata and Temari landed on the sea alongside him. They didn't provide comfort since they knew him better than that. Hinata stretched out and clasped his palm, her own iron-threaded bandages drenched with seawater. "He's gone," she whispered softly. "He was never here," Naruto answered. He looked toward the mainland, where the fight was still raging. "The man with the mask is still out there, and he's the one who's going to pay for every pound of this iron." Naruto turned and began walking back toward the shore, the big sword on his back serving as a permanent grave monument for the father he never knew. The sky over the Middle Plains was no longer blue, it was a bruised, heavy purple, dominated by the presence of a mythological figure. Madara Uchiha stood atop a gigantic rock formation, arms crossed, his eyes, the immortal Rinnegan, scanning the thousands of partnered shinobi below with the detached fascination of a gardener inspecting weeds. "So this is the power of the modern era." Madara's voice echoed across the plains, propelled by a chakra so dense it felt physical. "A sea of sheep led by children, it is as I suspected. The world is too broken to be saved, it must be dreamed." Tobi stood next him in quiet, his mask shattered and showing the hollow eye of a man who had lost everything. "The Black Swordsman is here, Madara. He is the only variable the dream cannot account for." "A boy with a piece of iron?" Madara laughed, a dry, frightening sound. "Let him come. Even iron melts in the sun." The arrival of the Eclipse Breaker, the allied shinobi forces were paralyzed. The five Kage stood at the front, their bodies beaten and their spirits shaken by Madara's perfect Susanoo, which loomed behind him like a mountain of blue light. Then the ground started to vibrate. It wasn't an earthquake tremor. It was a rhythmic, heavy thud, the sound of a weight so massive that the ground groaned with each stride. Naruto Uzumaki emerged from the front lines, surrounded by dust and smoke. He did not look like a ninja. In interstice mode, he resembled a shard of emptiness. The gold and purple aura surrounding the Berserker armor was so strong that the rain turned to steam before it could reach him. Hinata and Temari followed behind him, calm as veterans who had witnessed the end of the world. Naruto paused in front of the five Kage. He did not provide a status report. He did not ask for orders. He released the true Dragon Slayer, the black iron blade clearing the sheath with a sound that seemed to hush the wind itself. "Get back," Naruto demanded. His voice was a two-tone harmony that made the Raikage's hair stand on end. "This isn't a war for shinobi anymore, it's a slaughter for a struggler." Madara gazed down, his curiosity piqued. "The Jinchuriki. You carry the smell of the interstice. Tell me, boy, why do you fight for this world of rot? In my infinite Tsukuyomi, there are no scars, there is no iron. There is only the peace you've never known. I don't care about your dream," Naruto muttered, gripping the leather-wrapped hilt tightly. The brand on his neck was a white-hot coal, indicating a malice that existed before the Uchiha. Peace is just a word for people who are too afraid to wake up. I'm not here to save the world. I'm here to bury the man who thinks he can tell me when to sleep. Madara's eyes flashed. Then let us see how your reality fares against the weight of the heavens. Madara clapped his hands. The air above the clouds began to scream. A vast, tectonic shadow poured over the battlefield as a mile-wide meteorite began its descent toward the middle of the allied forces. Tengai Shinsei. The shinobi below dropped to their knees. Even the Kage glanced up with existential fear. There was no jutsu that could prevent it. There was no escaping. Naruto did not look up. He dropped into a low lunging position, holding the Dragon Slayer horizontally behind him. He activated every seal in his prosthetic iron arm, combining mechanical force and the Nine Tails chakra into a single, focused source of kinetic energy. Slayer's stroke. The world pillar. Naruto launched himself, not away from the impact, but right at it. He transformed into a streak of purple-gold light, with a black blade leading the assault. The accident resulted in a dazzling whiteout. The Dragon Slayer made contact with the meteorite's surface. Most blades would have shattered, and most men would have been destroyed. But the Dragon Slayer was formed of spite, and it refused to be crushed. Naruto did not only hit the rock, he sheared it. The black iron blade, strengthened by the Berserker armor's perfect defense, served as a wedge. Naruto shattered the meteorite with a roar that shook the land of fire to its foundations. The two sides of the mountain-sized rock moaned and separated, dropping to either side of the allied forces and crashing into distant mountains with enough force to send a tremor throughout the continent. Legendary standoff Naruto landed in the center of the crater, his armor steaming and his prosthetic arm flashing from excess energy. He looked up at Madara, who was now standing with his cross-armed posture shattered. "One more," Naruto exclaimed, his solitary blue eyes shining through the wolf helm. "Impressive," Madara exclaimed, his Rinnegan gleaming with genuine, predatory enthusiasm. "You didn't use a jutsu. You used the density of your soul. But tell me, boy, how many mountains can you cut before your iron gives out?" "As many as it takes," Naruto answered. Behind Madara, the moon started to alter. The clouds parted, and a faint red reflection appeared on the lunar surface. The countdown for the infinite Tsukuyomi had begun. "The night is young, Madara," Naruto replied, lifting the Dragon Slayer back onto his shoulders. "And I've got plenty of iron left for you." The sky over the Middle Plains was no longer blue. It was a bruised, heavy purple, dominated by the presence of a mythological figure. Madara Uchiha stood within the ribcage of his perfect Susanoo, arms crossed, his Rinnegan observing the thousands of partnered shinobi below with the detached curiosity of a gardener inspecting weeds. "You speak of wool and fire," Madara exclaimed, her voice amplified by the blue avatar of devastation. "But will is a flickering candle in the face of the eclipse. I am the end of the struggle. I am the silence." He swung the large blue blade of the Susanoo. The blow not only killed men, but it also changed the landscape by cutting the tops of two distant mountains. The shockwave blew the 5 kage away like leaves in a gale. He's a god," the Mizukage said quietly, coughing up blood as she stared at the mountain-sized fighter. "No," a voice rasped through the dust. "He's just a man who's forgotten how it feels to have his bones broken." Naruto went forward, the true Dragon Slayer trailing behind him, sparks shooting as the black iron collided with the stone. The interstice mode was at its zenith. The purple and gold chakra was so intense that it appeared to be flickering heavenly armor atop the jagged plates of Berserker armor. The 5 kage stood in startled stillness. They were world leaders, but when Naruto passed them, they felt like toddlers. His presence was so powerful that it felt like the entire battlefield was shifting toward him. "Stay down, Kage," Naruto ordered, his voice a dual-toned harmony of beast and fox. "If you try to help, you'll just get in the way of the iron." Naruto lunged. He didn't utilize any jutsu, he performed a kinetic collapse. He jumped hundreds of feet into the air, reaching the height of Susanoo's head. Slayer's stroke. The Skyhammer. He lowered the 400-pound blade in a vertical overhead cleave. Madara lifted Susanoo's sword to block. Crack. It sounded like a thunderclap inside a sealed tomb. The Susanoo's blue blade, an avatar of ultimate defense, developed a gigantic, spider-webbing fracture. The weight of Naruto's rage, channeled via the Dragon Slayer, was heavier than Madara's chakra. Madara's eyes narrowed. You hit the spirit of the Susanoo." "How?" "This blade exists in the interstice," Naruto muttered as his armor's wolf helm snapped shut. "It doesn't care about your chakra constructs. It only cares about what's real. And your dream isn't real." While Naruto held Madara's attention, Hinata and Temari carried out the flanking technique they had rehearsed in the shadows of the borderlands. Temari whirled her fan, a wind-style vacuum vortex, which removed the dust and particles, allowing Hinata to see clearly. Hinata targeted the receptors rather than the Susanoo. Her Byakugan traced the lines of chakra that led from Madara to the avatar. Iron palm. 8 trigrams needlepoint. She struck the air, sending jagged pulses of energy through the Susanoo's holes. The blue armor wavered, briefly losing structural integrity. Naruto required no further introduction. The metal and myth Naruto fired the prosthetic cannon from his iron arm while swinging the Dragon Slayer in a horizontal arc. The explosion drove the sword with enough force to cut through the Susanoo's chest plate. Naruto crashed into the Susanoo's cockpit and confronted Madara. "You want a world where no one suffers?" Naruto asked, his shadow iron grasp on Madara's throat. "Then you've already lost. Because the only way to not suffer is to not live. And I'm still breathing, Uchiha." Madara grasped Naruto's arm, his Rinnegan flashing. Shinra Tensei. The point-blank repelling force sent Naruto flying back through the Susanoo's ribcage, but he refused to let grip of his sword. He sliced a line through the Susanoo as he plummeted, the black iron absorbing the Uchiha's energy. Naruto landed on his feet, the armor groaning and blood pouring from the plate's seams. The brand on his neck was a blazing purple light. The Eye of the Moon Madara stood atop his mending avatar, looking down on the black swordsman with a mix of rage and true, terrifying reverence. "You are the anomaly, Naruto Uzumaki," Madara remarked, his voice lowering to a deep, ancient tone. "The one thing that refuses to be shaped, but the night is here. And even the strongest iron cannot stop the moon from looking at the world." Madara looked to the skies. The clouds separated completely. The moon was no longer white, it was a rich, bleeding crimson, with Rinnegan ripples beginning to appear on its surface. "The project Tsuki no Mi," Madara muttered. "The end of the struggle." The infinite Tsukuyomi began to shine brightly on the horizon. "Hinata! Temari! Get behind the iron," Naruto exclaimed. He slammed the true Dragon Slayer into the ground, then stood behind it, utilizing the 400-pound block as a spiritual windbreak. Only the black iron forged in the interstice could withstand the light of the dream. As the world around them fell into a deep, endless sleep, the black swordsman stood alone against the moon, his blade the only thing keeping the conflict real. The hush was absolute. There was no wind, no breath, and no sound of steel hitting steel. In the middle of the desolation, a single item rejected the moon's command. The true Dragon Slayer stood straight, 3 feet deep in the burnt dirt. Naruto Uzumaki knelt behind the enormous, shadow iron surface, pressing his forehead against the chilly metal. The brand on his neck was no longer purple, it was a bloody, white-hot brand of rebellion. The berserker armor creaked, the metal moaning as if it was straining to support the entire sky. "Is anyone still there?" Naruto muttered. He looked around. The 5 Kage were gone, wrapped in white. The allied shinobi forces were gone. Even Hinata and Temari, who had been standing at his side, were now mute silk sculptures entwined with the god tree roots. Naruto stood up with shaking legs. He was the last one remaining. He wasn't a god, he was a struggler. The Dragon Slayer, formed in the interstice, created a small, jagged region of reality that the dream could not penetrate. The threshold of dream. Naruto did not look at the moon. He examined the cocoons of his companions. He understood that inside those shells, they were living great lives. Hinata was in a world where her clan adored her. Temari was in a world where her boys were secure. And Sasuke was in a world where the Uchiha existed. "You think you're giving them a gift," Naruto muttered, peering up at the god tree's silhouette. "But you're just stealing their scars. And their scars are the only thing that belongs to them." Naruto grasped the hilt of the Dragon Slayer. He felt the beast of darkness and the fox within him snarling together. They didn't want the dream. They wanted to hunt. Slayer's stroke. The Veil Ripper. Naruto did not swipe at an enemy. He swung into the air in front of Hinata's cocoon. Because the blade existed on both the physical and spiritual worlds, it severed the connection to the infinite Tsukuyomi rather than simply cutting the silk. The air screamed as reality was violently ripped open. The first anchor. Hinata. Naruto stepped through the rift. He found himself in an overly bright and pristine version of Konoha. Hinata was present, standing within the Hyuga complex. She appeared happy. Her father smiled at her. Neji was lively and smiling with his friends. "Hinata," Naruto's voice sliced through the dream's music, a jarring interruption. Her eyes went wild as she turned. "In this world, the black swordsman was a stranger. A creature, a monster really, loomed before her. It was clad in armor, smeared with blood, and hefted a massive block of iron. Who are you? What brings you here? I'm the truth you want to escape, Naruto declared. He approached, the dragon slayer, and the grass underneath him darkened with a smear of black ash. This isn't happening, Hinata. The clan doesn't care about you this way. Neji is gone, and everything is falling apart. Get lost, she yelled, her dream father moving in to shield her. Naruto didn't clash with the apparition. His iron prosthetic hand shot out, clamping down on Hinata's wrist. The brand's frigid, searing agony coursed through her, a direct line to his will. Feel it, Naruto said. The burden. The chill. The fight. That's where we found each other, Hinata. Not in a place of beauty. In the muck. The dream started to splinter. The sky blushed, a hue reminiscent of a fresh bruise. Hinata's gaze sharpened, the lavender hue hardening into a steely determination once more. She stared at the crimson stains on Naruto's armor, and then it clicked. Naruto-kun, she breathed. It was so warm here. I know, Naruto replied. The sun? It's a deception. Let's move. The guards awakening Naruto yanked Hinata back through the rift. The wasteland was still, a stark expanse, when the god tree's roots stirred. They reached out, feeling the disturbance. Naruto yanked Temari from her slumber, a dream of a verdant paradise in the desert, much like he'd done before. As the three of them reassembled, the last live beings amid a realm of shadows, the atmosphere pulsed with a fresh, unsettling resonance. A figure began its descent from the apex of the god tree. It wasn't Madara. Madara's form was now a vessel, his flesh pale as bone, his hair a cascade of white. Kagaya Otsutsuki, the progenitor of chakra, regarded the three strugglers with a gaze that transcended both time and the physical realm. You, Kaguya intoned, her voice a rumble, a sound that seemed to come from the very earth itself. You are the ones who turn away from the beginning. You are the prickles in my paradise. Naruto hefted the true dragon slayer, settling it atop his shoulder. The interstice mode ignited, a sprawling, ethereal wolf's head of gold and purple energy materializing behind him. We're not thorns, Naruto stated, his blue eye meeting the goddess's gaze. We're the woodcutters. We're here to fell your tree. Kaguya's hand went up, and everything changed. The desolate expanse had vanished, giving way to a realm of constantly changing ice and a gravity that felt like a vice on their chests. Stand firm. Naruto shouted. Hinata assumed a position, her hands suffused with the iron palm's energy. Temari unfurled her fan, a gust of wind-style chakra forming a protective shield against the biting cold. Naruto moved, the dragon slayer's blade biting into the frozen ground. The black swordsman had beyond the confines of mere humanity, or even the role of a ninja. He was the bedrock upon which everything else rested. The fight doesn't stop until the metal gives in, Naruto said quietly. You, Kaguya intoned, her voice a low rumble that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of the frozen world. You cast no illumination. You're devoid of vitality. You're a void in the fabric of my existence. Her gaze was fixed on Naruto. To her all-seeing gaze, Hinata and Temari appeared as flickering embers of chakra. They were faint, yet still discernible. Naruto was, very simply, nothing. No chakra, no vibrant energy, just a heavy, dark mass of iron and malice. I'm the thing you forgot to bury, Naruto rasped. The golden radiance had faded. The berserker armor had become a void, an obsidian black that swallowed the light of the realm. His movements were without chakra to sustain them. He possessed the struggler's will, a force of sheer, physical drive that bent the goddess's rules. The ash that kills all Kaguya lifted her hands, and the ice floor buckled under Naruto. All-killing ash bones. Gray, hardened spikes erupted from her hands, moving faster than thought itself. A single touch might reduce any living creature, no matter how powerful or renowned, to nothing more than ash. Naruto-kun, get out of the way. Hinata shouted. She surged on, her palms aglow with the iron palm's resonance. She didn't attempt to physically obstruct the bones. Instead, she employed her vibration to distort the air, narrowly deflecting their path. Tamari responded with a colossal wind-style vacuum wall, generating a barrier of pressure that began to decelerate the incoming bullets. Naruto stayed put. He settled in. The true Dragon Slayer cleaved the air in a downward stroke. The black iron blade collided with the ash bone. Most weapons would have shattered, however the Dragon Slayer was born in the interstice, that space where being and nothingness meet. The sound echoed, sharp and sudden. The ashbone, a divine weapon, splintered upon contact with the heap of iron. Impossible. Kaguya breathed, her voice barely audible. Chakra is the essence of all things. Everything is mine. I don't belong to anyone, Naruto snarled, the wolf helm of his armor sealing with a metallic click. Naruto activated the mechanical torque in his prosthetic arm. He didn't rely on a jutsu to get to her. Instead, he employed the prosthetic hook, latching onto a sharp ice formation. He then pulled himself toward Kaguya, a dark projectile hurtling through the air. Kaguya altered the fabric of reality. The ice vanished in an instant. They found themselves in the gravity dimension. The atmosphere thickened, a weighty presence that could have crushed stone walls. Hinata and Tamari crashed down onto the crimson, jagged earth, the impact sending a shockwave through their bodies as they struggled to bear the unexpected, massive weight. Kaguya floated, a picture of ease, gazing down. Submit. The burden of existence isn't something humans are built to bear. Naruto knelt, the Dragon Slayer his only support. The armor shrieked, its internal spikes biting into his flesh, a desperate measure to keep his joints from buckling under the weight of the world. He lacked the chakra to fortify his muscles, yet his blood flowed with iron. Get up! With a thunderous sound that reverberated across the crimson peaks, Naruto rose. He didn't merely remain stationary, he leapt. He used gravity, transforming it into a springboard. His muscles frayed, only to be swiftly repaired by the armor's merciless filaments. He swung the Dragon Slayer, the massive blade arcing through the thick air, a howl of disturbed pressure following in its wake. Kaguya attempted to open a portal, hoping to evade the incoming blow, but the Dragon Slayer was already in position. Since the blade was an interstice weapon, its effect wasn't limited to the individual. It struck the very space they inhabited. The obsidian blade sliced through the rim of Kaguya's portal, fracturing the spatial opening as if it were just glass. The words hit Kaguya hard, a thin, crimson mark surfacing on her face. The blood had flowed. The goddess stared at the crimson smears on her hands, her gaze growing wide with a blend of shock and understanding. You're not a ninja, you're the destination. I'm just a guy with a sword, Naruto stated, his lone blue eyes searing through the crimson holes of his headpiece. And I've got a lot of world to greet, the final convergence. Hinata and Tamari pushed themselves upright, their gazes locked onto the goddess. The opportunity presented itself. Naruto had accomplished the unimaginable. He had instilled terror in a god. We have to seal her, Hinata shouted, her hands trembling with a final, frantic energy. Naruto, the sun, and the moon. We must be the ones holding everything steady. I'm the iron, Naruto declared, hefting the Dragon Slayer onto his shoulder. You two hold her steady. I'll make sure she doesn't get away. Naruto advanced, the earth trembling as if acknowledging the weight of his purpose. The fight to determine the world's fate had shifted. It was no longer a contest of chakra or preordained paths. It was all about the fight. The gravity dimension had ceased to be a place of conflict. It had become a relentless force. The crimson soil shuddered. Kaguya Otsutsuki, her features a portrait of divine wrath, started to absorb the chakra of every soul lost in slumber across the globe. Above her, an expansive truth-seeking ball coalesced, a dark sun poised to obliterate the realm and everything within, a prelude to a fresh beginning. You are but fleeting shadows, Kaguya's voice echoed, a fading star's final cry. I am the earth. I am the water. You cannot destroy the world. Naruto remained silent. He simply couldn't. The pull of gravity was crushing, his lungs buckling under the strain, while his blood seeped through his skin. The berserker armor was his only anchor, the internal pins digging into his ribs, preventing them from fracturing. He was defenseless against her. He lacked the guiding light of a will of fire. He possessed just the true Dragon Slayer and the raw, unfiltered spite that had sustained him from the moment he first drew breath in a back alley. Naruto-kun. Hinata's words came out as a breathless cry. Crawling through the crimson dust, her lavender eyes remained locked on Kaguya. The seal. Just a moment, you need to get her on the ground. Got it, Naruto rasped, his voice thick with the metallic taste of blood. He didn't rely on a jutsu to close the distance. He activated the prosthetic cannon built inside his iron arm, albeit he didn't direct it against Kaguya. He pointed it at the ground, just behind him. The blast functioned like a rocket, shoving his massive, armored body against the relentless pull of gravity. He was a shadow, a dark line against the crimson expanse above. Kaguya unleashed her all-killing ashbones, a storm of gray projectiles designed to obliterate him. Naruto stood his ground. He swung the Dragon Slayer, a wild, chaotic arc, the heap of iron, serving as a makeshift barrier. The bones splintered against the interstice forged metal, denied their usual decay. Pinning the goddess, Naruto arrived. He didn't aim for her head. He plunged past her, his prosthetic hand seizing her white robes, and then he slammed her down against the crimson rock. She struggled to rise, but Naruto plunged the true Dragon Slayer through the gap between her arm and her side, driving the blade a full 6 feet into the solid rock below. Stay down. The blade, a thing of the interstice, didn't only hold her still, it held her being. The black iron served as a spiritual lightning rod, channeling Kaguya's overwhelming chakra down into the planet's very heart. She let out a scream, her shape wavering as the god was compelled to adhere to the struggler's physical laws. Now, Naruto bellowed, his helmet popping apart to expose his teeth, a crimson-stained snarl twisting his features. Hinata and Temari were there. Their skin bore no ghost sages, 6 paths, marks. Instead, it was etched with the scars of their own survival. Hinata's hands pulsed with a radiant, purple light, the iron palm. Celestial grounding technique in full effect. Temari's fan was gone, her hands now empty. Her wind chakra, infused with her essence, honed Hinata's attack into a precise, cutting force. Their hands came down hard on Kaguya's shoulders. 6 paths. Shibaku Tensai. The moment they touched, a white light swallowed everything. The dimension's gravity flipped, yanking the red rock and the god tree's white silk toward Kaguya. The ground was drawing her down, a nascent moon coalescing in her wake. No. My garden. My children. Kaguya's cry trailed off, swallowed by the encroaching stone. With the seal's completion, the very fabric of the dimension started to unravel. The crimson cliffs dissolved into a haze, and the oppressive atmosphere gave way to the refreshing, salty wind of the land of lightning. Naruto stood alone in the clearing, the true Dragon Slayer still embedded in the earth. The armor retracted, the dark plates folding away, and he was left exposed, his garments a ragged, bloodied mess. The god tree started to wilt, its once pristine white cocoons slowly coming undone. All throughout the globe, countless individuals crumpled to the ground, struggling for breath as they emerged from the perfect dream, only to face the stark, unyielding truth of their wounds. Naruto stared at his palms. Their hands trembled. The brand on his neck had settled, a silent, silver mark that no longer wept. We did it, Temari murmured, sinking to her knees as the sun began to crest the horizon. The dream's done. The dream was easy, Naruto said, his voice cracking as it settled back into its familiar, sardonic register. His gaze fell on the allied shinobi forces, who were starting to move in the distance. The real challenge begins now. They have to make a life. When the 5 Cage and the remaining members of the Konoha 11 finally got their bearings, the heart of the battlefield was deserted. No words were spoken. No triumphal march. A colossal, gaping trench marred the landscape, the sole remnant of a once mighty heap of iron. Naruto, Hinata, and Temari strode toward the distant skyline, leaving behind the jubilant throngs and the grieving remnants. The villages faded from view. They were heading for the interstice, those pockets of the earth still in need of a struggler. Where to now, Naruto-kun? Hinata inquired, her fingers intertwining with his. Naruto glanced at the true Dragon Slayer perched on his shoulder. The black iron gleamed, mirroring the sun's true brightness at last. Wherever the iron is heavy, Naruto remarked. The fight, Hinata, it's a constant. It simply becomes more manageable over time. Rebuilding the 5 great nations wasn't about flashy techniques, it was about the grit of hard work, the ache of constant effort. 6 months had slipped by since the sky ceased its weeping. In Konoha, the scaffolding around the Hokage statue echoed with the sound of hammers, a simple, human rhythm that Naruto Uzumaki found more genuine than the will of fire. Tsunade was at her desk, staring at a pile of pardons. At the top, a folder bore a black seal, the Black Swordsman. He's not coming back, is he? Kakashi murmured, his shoulders slumping against the window frame. He seemed weary, his vest marked by the grime of laboring on the orphanage's restoration. He never fit in, did he, Kakashi? Tsunade murmured, her voice heavy as she settled into her chair. For years, we debated his future, speculating on which kind of ninja he'd embody. Little did we know, he was already busily transforming into the very person tasked with dismantling the idea of ninjas to protect us all. She signed the pardon, and then, without a second thought, tossed it into the flames. He's already past it, doesn't even need our absolution. He's on to the next battle. The tavern at the edge of the world in a village without a name, nestled on the edge of the land of iron. Snow descended in heavy, quiet sheets. The tavern's interior was thick with the scent of wood smoke and the savory aroma of roasted meat. 3 individuals huddled in the shadows, distant from the dancing flames. Naruto leaned against the wall, his true dragon slayer resting beside him on the seat. The black iron, shrouded in pristine leather, commanded a hush among the other guests. His prosthetic arm lay disconnected, a silent companion on the table. He worked with precision, applying oil to the internal mechanisms of the cannon integrated within it. Tamari took a drink of her tea. The Raikage's still trying to recruit us for the Allied Guard, I see. She appeared at ease, her massive fan leaning nonchalantly against the table. I suspect his primary concern is that you'll choose to visit the Cloud and, well, remodel his palace. Tell him the iron's too heavy for politics, Naruto rasped. His voice, once a harsh, robotic rasp, had softened, regaining a gentle, human tranquility. The lone blue eye gazed out the window. No more palaces for me. Hinata settled next to him, her bandaged hands, still encased in the thin, metallic threads, lying on his own. A messenger from the Hyuga elders arrived. They have chosen me to lead the clan. They believe the Iron Maiden is the only one capable of guiding them through this new age. And, Naruto prompted, his gaze fixed on her. I mentioned I already have a job, Hinata replied, a thin, almost brittle smile playing on his lips. My husband is a man of unyielding will. The tavern door swung wide, admitting a gust of frigid air and a figure cloaked in traveler's garb. He was missing an arm, and his eyes seemed to hold the weight of eternity. Sasuke Uchiha remained at a distance from the table. He leaned on the bar, his drink in hand, and studied Naruto. No bitterness lingered, just the weighty, unspoken understanding that they were both still here. I heard you split a goddess in 2, Sasuke remarked, his tone even. I pinned her to the dirt, Naruto said, correcting himself. The females handled everything else. Sasuke's head bobbed, his eyes fixed on the Dragon Slayer for a moment longer. The world is shifting. Whispers of a chakra-less existence circulate, a new era dubbed the Era of the Iron. Some claim the shinobi's time has passed, a fleeting fantasy we've now left behind. It's a good time, Naruto added, more difficult, but truthful. Sasuke downed the last of his drink and made to go. I'm heading to the Uzu ruins. I'm curious in the ironworks. Perhaps I'll discover a way to be of service, even without a mentor. Stay on track, Uchiha, Naruto grumbled. It's a long road ahead. The trio ventured into the snow as the sun dipped below the horizon. Naruto slung the true Dragon Slayer over his shoulder, its heft a welcome, reassuring presence. The fox was silent. No pulse, no echo of what had been, and certainly no hint of chakra. The chill of the air was all he felt, and the might of his own body. His gaze drifted toward the far line where earth met sky. Bandits continued to haunt the mountain passes, and the echoes of the Akatsuki's legacy still drew in cults. Moreover, the interstice remained a haven for creatures of the dark. "What's the plan now?" Tamari inquired, fiddling with her fan. Naruto gazed down the snowy slope, a route stretching toward an uncertain future. "The fight doesn't come with a guide," Naruto stated, his tone resolute. "We keep moving forward until the iron signals that it's time to stop." The Black Swordsman, the Iron Maiden, and the Princess of the Gale strode into the gathering dusk, three figures etched against the pale horizon. They were heading into a tomorrow forged by the weight of their wounds. The struggler's tale has reached its end, while the world continues on. Would you want I create a character profile for Naruto, chronicling his abilities and the Black Swordsman lore from the series' conclusion, or should we embark on a fresh narrative in an entirely different world? The mountains of the Land of Iron were famed for their stillness, yet the cabin tucked away in the Silver Peaks Valley was anything but silent. The house, constructed of stout timber and solid stone, weathered the elements with a resilience mirroring its inhabitant. The interior was alive with a warm, familiar embrace of wood smoke, the savory scent of venison cooking, and the delightful disorder that only children can create. Naruto, seated at the top of a gigantic oak table he'd crafted with his own hands, surveyed the scene. He appeared changed. The harsh lines of the struggler had softened during 10 years of relative calm, yet the core of his being still burned with the same intensity. His hair had been cropped, and the creases around his eyes suggested a guy who had shared more smiles than frowns. The prosthetic arm, a remnant of his past, now served a different purpose entirely, a reliable seat for a 4-year-old girl. She had purple eyes and a smile that hinted at trouble. "Dad. The big rock story, please," Mina pleaded, her small fingers pulling at the leather strap of his iron hand. Again. Naruto's voice was a low, velvety rumble, the kind that made you lean in. He watched his son, Ryu, a 7-year-old with a wild mop of blonde hair and Temari's sharp, assessing eyes, as the boy struggled to keep a wooden training sword balanced on his finger. "Seems your brother's more focused on the mechanics than the reasoning this evening." Hinata stepped out of the kitchen, a pot of steaming stew clutched in her hands. She glided, a whisper of movement, her hair neatly gathered. She stopped, her hand resting on Naruto's shoulder as she moved past him, a gesture that still anchored him. "The stew's bubbling, Ryu. Put the sword down before you set something on fire," Hinata remarked, her tone soft, yet laced with the kind of command that had once made her a target in the bingo books. "And if you break that table, it'll be you heading out to the forge to help your father mend it," Tamari said, stepping inside from the porch, a bundle of firewood in her arms. She appeared luminous in the flickering glow, her noble countenance eased by the warmth of the home she'd labored to safeguard. She set the wood down near the fire and settled next to Naruto, her fingers slipping beneath the table to find his. With the bowls brimming and the bread torn, the room embraced the familiar, raucous cadence of a family that had weathered the apocalypse side by side. No mention of destiny, nor any chakra discussions. No orders from a Hokage, either. The evening was defined by a familiar argument: who would wash the dishes? Meanwhile, the children buzzed with anticipation, their eyes shining at the sight of the season's inaugural snowfall. Naruto observed them, his wives, his children, the life he'd painstakingly built from the rubble of his own past. For someone once branded as a mere receptacle for a monster, he'd somehow morphed into the very heart of a house. His gaze drifted to the room's farthest corner. There it was, the true dragon slayer, poised on a stand of black iron wood, a unique creation. The enormous blade gleamed, its matte black finish mirroring the dancing orange glow of the flames. It had ceased to be a tool of war, now, it stood as a protector, a quiet reminder that the fight had been justified. "Naruto?" Hinata murmured, her voice barely above a whisper, as she caught the direction of his eyes. Naruto glanced over his shoulder to the table. He watched Mina, struggling to offer a morsel of bread to his iron hand, and Ryu, inquiring of Tamari about the valley's breeze. A warmth blossomed in his breast, unrelated to the flickering flames or the fox's presence. "I'm here," Naruto announced, his lone blue eyes shining with a deep, unspoken joy. "I'm exactly where I need to be." The last scene as darkness settled and the kids were snug in their fur-lined beds, Naruto lingered on the porch with Hinata and Tamari. The snow started to drift down, gentle and white, transforming everything into a hushed landscape. The Black Swordsman, the Iron Maiden, and the Princess of the Gale shared a moment, gazing into the tranquil night. The fight wasn't over. Life remained a challenge, the winters still bitter, and the earth still held its dark corners. But as Naruto gathered his loved ones, the burden of the iron felt strangely light. It felt like home. The end. A massive shout out to the subscriber who gave me the prompt for this non-reincarnated Naruto. You asked for a story where the iron was the only thing that mattered, and I hope chapter 27 gave you the payoff you were looking for. Your suggestion allowed us to explore a much darker, more grounded side of the Naruto world. One where the true Dragon Slayer became more iconic than any jutsu. Thank you for the creative fuel. It's been an epic ride. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this video. I'm thrilled you watched the video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe for even more exciting content coming your way soon.